So, it's an interesting one. And I'll tell you why, just as a little backdrop to this. I'm sorry, I always use my previous life as a witness, but that was one thing they used to pride themselves on. And I think other churches do that in a fashion that does not actually account for the biblical standard on this. And that is, should a Christian minister receive money for their work in the church? Now, some pride themselves on being entirely charitable. You know, oh, I don't take anything, or we don't charge for anything, or this sort of stuff, and it all sounds very nice, and it's all, you know, but actually that has an appeal to the world, doesn't it? The world actually is the sort of, they love that, don't they? Where it's, oh yeah, it's free of charge, you know, and well, we do live in a society where it's something for nothing, isn't it? And actually, that's not the way it should work in the church. We'll discover tonight. The biblical thing is that we do support one another, and especially those that are in the ministry. So, 1 Corinthians 9 will reveal all of that, verses 1 to 14.
Can we read it?
Please.
Okay. 1 Corinthians 9, 1 to 14.
Please, thanks, Tim.
Am I not an apostle? Am I not free? Have I not seen Jesus Christ our Lord? Are not ye my work in the Lord? If I be not an apostle unto others, yet doubtless I am to you. For the seal of mine apostleship are ye in the Lord. Mine answer to them that do examine me is this: have we not power to eat and to drink? Have we not power to lead about a sister, a wife, as well as other apostles, and as the brethren of the Lord, and Cephas? For I only and Barnabas have we not power to forbear working? Who goeth a warfare any time at his own charges? Who planteth a vineyard, and eateth not of the fruit thereof? Or who feedeth the flock, and eateth not of the milk of the flock? Say I these things as a man, or saith not the law the same also? For it is written in the law of Moses, Thou shalt not muzzle the mouth of an ox that treadeth out the corn. Doth God not take care for the oxen? For saith he, it altogether for our sakes no doubt this is written, that he that ploweth should plow in hope, and he that thresheth in hope should be partaker of his hope. If we have sown unto you spiritual things, is it a great thing that we shall reap your carnal things? For if others be partakers of this power over you, are not we rather? Nevertheless we have not used this power, but suffer all things, lest we should hinder the gospel of Christ. Do ye not know that they which minister about holy things live of the things of the temple, and they which wait at the altar are partakers with the altar? Even so hath the Lord ordained that they which preach the gospel should live of the gospel.
Thank you. Great. So, we can kind of split this section into two parts. The first part, as you've probably noticed, is Paul defending his apostleship. Am I not an apostle? Now, it's a rhetorical question, because he then goes on to prove how he is an apostle. How does he do that? He says, have I not seen Jesus Christ our Lord? Now, why would that be a sign of his apostleship? Well, do you remember when they chose an apostle in place of Judas? Well, it's Acts chapter 1, 21 and 22. Just look at what was one of the qualifications. Interesting. Acts 1, 21 and 22. And it says, wherefore of these men which have companied with us all the time, that the Lord Jesus went in and out among us, beginning from the baptism of John, unto that same day that he was taken up from us, must one be ordained to be a witness with us of his resurrection. A witness of his resurrection. In other words, they saw the risen Jesus, and Paul also saw the risen Jesus, didn't he, in vision. Well, no, sorry, not in vision. He saw the risen Jesus. So one of the hallmarks of his apostleship. So I've not seen Jesus, and then he says, "Are you not my work in the Lord?" So, who founded the church in the first place? Who was the apostle to that church? Well, it was Paul. He says that you're the seal of my apostleship. In other words, a visible proof or confirmation, an authentication of what already exists. There's no way that you can found a church without some special blessing from God. And clearly Paul had this. Oh, we've got another Paul who's done that actually here. But there we are, you see, that's God's blessing. So Paul is able to use a defense of his apostleship, and he uses in verse 3 that word which is translated, we've probably heard it before, apologia or apologia, however you want to pronounce it, where the word apologetics derives. But did you notice in verse 4 he says, "Have we not power to eat and to drink?" That's an interesting question. Have we not power to eat and to drink? Why would he, surely everybody has the right to eat and drink. Well, he's talking with reference to Corinth, to the church, that the church is able to actually feed him, to meet his physical needs, that of eating and of drinking. Recall when Jesus sent out his disciples, he said, well, can you finish it off? The labourer is worthy of his
hire.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In fact, let's just confirm that one. I've got it. Well, there's a couple of places where it's cited, but Luke 10 verse 7 is a good one. Luke 10 verse 7. So he says, remember in this passage, it's the famous one of the harvest is great, the labourers are few, and I'm sending you out as lambs among wolves. And in verse 7, in the same house remain, eating and drinking such things as they give, for the labourer is worthy of his hire. Yes? So this is Jesus' direct command that they trust in the Lord, and that where people contribute and offer food and drink water or whatever it is, then that is God's provision, and it's only right. Now Paul is taking that, he's taking Jesus' words, and he's now applying it to the ministry that somebody may be in, and their right to receive support as they go on in that. So flip back, and this is the interesting point, I think, at this stage, that whilst he says in verse 4, have we not power to eat and to drink, he's referring maybe to himself and the likes of Barnabas, but he also says in verse 5, have we not power to lead about a sister, a wife, as well as other apostles, and as the brethren of the Lord and Cephas. Now why is he saying that? I tell you why he's saying that, because he's bringing in not just the minister, that is, only he is worthy of the hire, but his family is too. And that was already what was happening in other churches, that other apostles who were maybe leading about a wife were also in the receipt of support so that they might accomplish their ministry. They were also eating and drinking, and that's why we have to remind ourselves that if we are in the ministry and we do get support, that support extends beyond ourselves to our whole family. It isn't just for one person alone. It's for the whole arrangement, family arrangement. Now, Paul at this point really stresses this home. So it's not enough for him to say, I have the right to eat and drink, but he's going to give us now, I've got here 5 arguments why there is a right for ministers to receive the support of their churches. Okay, so let's look at them. Verse 7, he talks about the soldier who goeth a warfare any time at his own charges. He talks about the farmer who planteth a vineyard and eateth not of the fruit thereof. And he talks about the shepherd, or who feedeth a flock and eateth not of the milk of the flock. Okay, so it was customary practice to pay workers, all of these workers, a wage, yes, who had diligently laboured in that particular calling, in that particular form of employment, if you like. And that customary practice has been going on since, well, time immemorial, I would say, isn't it? Where, you know, I mean, okay, it may not be practiced fairly always, but it's a modern expression that the labourer is worthy of his hire. Is that not right? It's in common parlance now. In the modern day, we might say a fair day's pay for a fair day's work, is it? Something like that? Yes? Yeah, I think that's how we would see it. And this is the point. Christian workers should expect nothing less. How's about that? But we'll touch on how it can get out of hand later. So, that was argument 1. Look at people, they work, they get paid. Well, don't forget, Paul's built Corinth, the church. He's laboured extensively. He's expended himself. So, whilst that's done under God's strength, God nonetheless expects there to be support. We only think of the Levites themselves. What did they do? They worked full-time in the temple. But the tenth, the tithe, was paid directly to them, wasn't it? It was to support them. Okay, so then he uses this great illustration in verse 9. For it is written in the law of Moses, Thou shalt not muzzle the mouth of the ox that treadeth out the corn. Doth God take care for oxen? Well, he does take care for oxen, because the other translations would put, well, what does God care about oxen? Well, he does, but what he's saying is, okay, there's the oxen there, yeah, ploughing away. Well, the ox is allowed to eat some of the corn, or tread it when he treads out the corn. So God takes care of the ox, even though it's a beast of burden, if you like, and is doing all the work, it still has some level of rights. Well, if that's the case, then how much more so with humans? Yeah. Oh yes, and the point here is, in verse 11, Paul doesn't say that. Paul helps you to see that the work in ministry is a work. He says, if we have sown unto you spiritual things, is it a great thing if we shall reap your carnal things? if we have sown unto you spiritual things. And so that's a great conditional clause, if you like, to help you to decide, can I give to a ministry? Say if you have money and you're thinking, I'd like to give to a Christian ministry abroad somewhere, it's on your heart to use those funds, then if we have sown unto you spiritual things, is that what is going on? Are they sowing spiritual things, and are you seeing any growth for it as well? I mean, some growth does take time, but we know how some ministries, once you start to look into them and at their charter and at their mission statement and so forth, it becomes very questionable as to what they're about and whether they really are proclaiming the gospel, or in fact they're just a social outfit. It was nice just recently to read the annual accounts and statement for Renewal Northwest, which is just down the hill. Terrific. I mean, the whole thing is so geared towards getting people born again, really. Of course God does that, but that's what they're about in the gospel. It was just nice to see a ministry, and they're becoming increasingly more rare, that is centered on getting people saved. Yes. And then with those saved persons, putting them in work down at Renewal, so that because the devil has worked for idle hands, so that they're put to
Is that the furniture?
Yeah, exactly.
Wes.
Yeah, Wes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mum and Dad know him really well.
Right.
Because their assembly, so
Part
yeah.
of that kind of thing.
Yeah, I know Wes. We've had some stuff of him. Really nice guy.
Really nice, isn't he? Yeah. So he's was
He
brethren.
is brethren. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not aware that he's ever left. Yeah, he's brethren.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a very good work they do there. And we had like a dark-wood dining room table, brilliant. I mean, probably cost sort of £700 brand new, but we got it for 100 because he knows Mum and Dad,
Right. Yes.
So it was fantastic condition, and it of course it's recycling stuff.
Absolutely.
And it's Christian as well, so it could hardly be better.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So it was just great to read that, and then also to find out the process by which he takes on board employees, that they're in the faith, and that in the morning before work they have half an hour morning worship and prayer. So it really is like proper stuff going on there. It's not like a sort of liberally kind of social gospel-y type thing. So there's an example, but there are others. We had a good one, Paul, I think recently in Haiti. It was quite clear that orphanage was about raising children to be Christians. Yeah. Okay, so there's the condition. Are they sowing spiritual things? Now, verse 12, Paul says here, if others be partakers of this power over you, are not we rather? Interesting. So actually, they're already doing it. They're already supporting people in the ministry. But Paul is having to combat somewhat the Corinthians, because they don't really like him, do they? That's what it is. They don't appreciate, because he's a true man of God, so he says it how it is. But he has every right. And you know what? In this particular case, in Paul's case, he's not even doing it. He doesn't take up that right. Rather, he makes tents, doesn't he, to supplement. But that was his own decision, and I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe he says we should hinder the gospel of Christ, so maybe he was concerned about newer ones looking on and thinking, is this about him just making money? Nonetheless, he says there is still that power to have direct support. So, verse 13, do you not know that they which minister about holy things live of the things of the temple, and they which wait at the altar are partakers with the altar. So it was common practice in temples, if there was someone ministering in that temple, to receive support. I mean, that was true even of the pagan temples, for goodness sake. So, you know, and they could see the sense of it. Well, it certainly was true of the Jewish temple. And as we've shown, the labourer is worthy of his hire. Jesus supports the practice. I just wanted to give another example of this in Galatians chapter 6 and verse 6. It says, "Let him that is taught in the word communicate unto him that teacheth in all good things." Now, why have we mentioned that? Because, well, in fact, why? I've asked these two. Any ideas? Well, it's talking about the fact that there were ministers in verse 6 who were teaching in all good things. That was their practice. That was their work. That was their ministry. Whether it be, you see, so there's a one in teaching, there's, you know, eldership and so forth. You do have in the church what you might call lay preachers, you know, or for the sermon sandwich on Sunday, they might do something. But what we're talking here about is somebody that is in it full time. Yeah, a full time minister of God's word. Okay. So they get their living from the work they do. It doesn't mean that they get rich, but they get their living. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it seems appropriate that they would be able to live a lifestyle that is, you know, well, the Proverbs say, "Give me neither poverty nor riches." There's a standard. But it wouldn't be that they'd be, you know, wearing threadbare clothing, and they wouldn't be driving Lamborghinis, as some do. So all of this is, I know sometimes this kind of subject can be, you know, people can get a bit touchy about it, but it's something I'm strong on because of the realization that God expects this from us, actually, to support ministry, and you know, it's almost a reflection as well of our heart appreciation for what's going on. It's a way of saying thank you to God, isn't it, as well? Yeah. So, how do you give and who do you give to? Well, that's between you and the Lord. But we've got our own church as well, haven't we? And yeah, it's good to assess. Well, this is how I would see it, but it's good to assess your income, isn't it? And then talk to God about that and what portion of that you're able to support the ministry of the church. And to remember that there is more happiness in giving than there is in receiving. So, I'll give you my bank details after the.
God bless you, brother.
Yeah. And I think as well, it's a reminder too. I think, you know, we live in a something for nothing age. We do. It's amazing when you go into town, for example. And have you ever seen these people when they're handing out free cans of this and You know what I mean? Or
Cola.
Yeah, and you know, it's like flies round
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
People just take. If it's free, they'll take. And it's so easy that could creep into even the church where, you know, we take but don't give. Or we give sporadically, that's another thing sometimes. Put the odd thing in here, odd thing in there, you know, but not without really thinking, well, this whole thing has to run on something. Are we regular contributors? Are we helping to support what is an eternal cause?